Hello, everybody. It's the Away Game Chicago Cubs podcast. Away Games pod on all the things. Follow us because we're actually talking about stuff. The Cubs are playing. I'm Kevin McCaffrey. The Cubs are winning. Hey, Adam Mamawala, how are you enjoying your week of Cubs baseball?
You know, I'm enjoying it a lot. I just got back from the West Coast. It was nice that the Cubs were able to accommodate my schedule and
That
also
is
be on the
nice.
West Coast for normal game times. I did have to watch the Cubs get walked off in a crowded sports book, which was not my favorite thing, but
Oh man! And I assume in
yeah.
Los Angeles, what was, or excuse me, in Las Vegas, what was the sports book you chose?
Well, I was staying in MGM, so I just happened to be. I was actually there watching the end of Game One of the Kings Warriors game, so more people were invested in that. But then, I mean, you've spent some time in some sports books, and they tend to change those TVs quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I was watching the Cubs game, and with two outs in the bottom of the ninth, they decided to change it to like the first inning of a Rockies game, and I was like, there's got to be some sort of oversight here.
Yeah, that's absurd because I mean that is when the bets are paying off too. Forget
Right.
being a sports fan. But and boy, the things really took a turn after two outs in the ninth in that one game.
They sure did, but I have to say, I mean, so we're recording this on Wednesday. The Cubs have one game left against the Athletics, and I mean, what a turnout it's been in Oakland these past couple nights. Just
Yeah.
Nico's family, and then no one else. And
Yeah.
but this is now four straight series wins for the Cubs. They since starting 1-3, I guess they've gone 9-3,
Mhm.
which I'm told is pretty good.
Yeah, it's it's putting him at 10 and 6. We're going to talk about we have more to talk about than we usually do on this episode. We're going to talk about Ian Happ's extension. We're going to talk about obviously winning sort of a bunch in all those series till now. Stroman and Steele, we've got Seiya is back
Hmm.
and like and I mean in terms of being back, two of the sort of like 1 year guys who we know are on the last year of their Cubdom. It's weird to have two guys this early in the season won't be back again probably, but
Right.
are important in Cody Bellinger and Marcus Stroman. But we have, yeah, I mean, it's winning series after series so far, and weirdly, the series against the Dodgers, they just should have swept,
Hmm.
and it makes me feel like the Dodgers maybe aren't that good. I mean, the Cubs played well, but you look at that lineup and it gets weak pretty quick in LA this year.
Yeah, I mean, I still think the Dodgers will be fine, but it's easy to overlook how many guys they've lost because of the
Yeah,
star power they still have. Like you look at that lineup and you still see Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman or any of the other pieces they have, but in the
right.
past few years they now don't have any either of the Turners. They don't have Seager
Mhm.
anymore. They don't have Bellinger, who obviously was up and down for them, but it is a different looking team, and they don't seem as unbeatable as they once did. I'll say it that way. It still was kind of an odd series in terms of how low scoring all of the games were, but I
Yeah.
think the most encouraging thing to me is that Saturday the Cubs lose a game that they really should have won. I think the game was lost when they didn't tack on with the bases loaded and one out in the eighth inning. Like it felt like that sort of game, and it's one of the only times that you'll see Happ have a really bad at bat,
Hmm.
which is he's allowed to do. Like
He
that
is.
happens
Yeah,
sometimes.
he's been outstanding so far.
Right. But the encouraging thing to me in terms of early returns with this Cubs team is that they thus far have not let games like that be the start of a losing streak.
Yeah.
So I think in years past, that would have been something where you're like, well, in an alternate timeline where Fulmer gets that save or we don't pitch to Peralta or
Hmm.
whatever it is, maybe we go on a little run here. But now the wheels are coming off. And on the contrary, the Cubs come out, they win a close game on Sunday. And then the even more impressive thing to me is that then you head into a series in Oakland, which feels like the ultimate trap series, saying like, "Hey, we just beat the Dodgers. We're coming off three straight series wins. Wouldn't it not surprise you at all as a Cubs fan if the Cubs go get swept in Oakland just because baseball?" And it's great that they haven't. So that encourages me. I would love to see them win today and actually complete their first sweep of the year, which everybody should be sweeping the A's.
That
Who's their
team is
manager? He
that
he
team
he
is
looks beleaguered.
terrible. Well, yeah, and he's young for a manager. It's Mark Kotze, isn't it? It's
Oh, it is Mark Kotze, yeah.
yeah, it's old, former player, and it's longer ago than it seems because we're old now. But yeah, it's he looks beleaguered. He should be beleaguered. That team is so bad.
They're
It
really
is
bad.
so bad, and it's one of those things where you look at a roster and you're like, well, they're awful, but they can't. In baseball, frequently. I mean, right now the Cubs. Obviously, we've got big vibes in Cubdom, but
Right.
we are tied with the Pirates, who are also the Pirates are 11-7 right now.
Yeah.
So
And they're down in O'Neill Cruz for the season.
exactly. So
For a while.
so
Yeah.
the point is not that the Cubs wins don't count. They do. They're booked. But it's just like rarely do teams play exactly to what you think they're going to. The
Hmm.
Oakland A's are 3-15. So I mean, this
Yeah.
is like incredibly bad. They are the worst team in baseball, and that's with Washington and Colorado out there too. So it's but I did, as you say, watching the Cubs come in and do what they're supposed to do, and the way they bounce back after the walk off against the Dodgers, they've also been bouncing back. I think within games, they've not been letting
Right.
games get away from them. Obviously, there was
Hmm.
the big outlier comeback against the Mariners, from down 7-zip. That was crazy, and then there was, but whenever it seems like whenever they give up a lead, they've been coming right back, or at least holding it right there and close. So far they've been really resilient, and yesterday, as we record this, it was against Oakland A's pitcher Ken Waldichuk, who was actually the Yankees prospect. He was traded from the Yankees. He was the Yankees prospect considered just above Hayden Wesneski
Ah.
as a starting pitcher. So
Waldichuk.
that's
What a hockey ass name.
it's a real hockey ass name. Welcome to the welcome to the NHL playoffs, everyone, but most of our Chicagoland listeners. Yeah, it's they got shut out by Waldenchuk for a long time, but hung with it. That was such a clear game of like, we're getting shut out by who? Okay, we're gonna lose. I
Right.
feel like the Cubs lose like 2 games to Reds fifth starters who I've never heard of and will never hear of again every season.
Yeah.
And
I'm
yeah,
sure it's not true, but it does feel like the Cubs must lead baseball in getting dominated by guys making their first big league start. I
like
feel like
over the
that
last
has
several
happened for
years.
yes,
Yeah.
for many, many years. The Cubs, some no-name person will get called up. You think, oh, the Cubs should win this game, and then they lose 6-0.
Yeah, but 10-6, and obviously we haven't even. Let's do one big picture thing before we get into more of the recent updates. Ian Happ, a real all-star level player, signed an extension that does extend years plural. So
Mm-hmm.
this is new news, and this is different from the Nico extension too. He signed a 3-year extension that begins at the end of this year. 3 years, $61 million. I believe he's got a no trade clause in there
Ooh.
too, and and that puts Ian Happ and Nico Horner here through 2026, and I think really outlines what this window is. I mean, I don't think you can call it a championship window starting right now, but it's a mini era now that you see where they're building through. And Seiya Suzuki also signed through 2026, so you can
Right.
set your calendars and be like, it's got to be adding pieces from
Mm-hmm.
here on out. This trade deadline depending.
Yeah, and it's also encouraging to know that these things can happen, period, but also can happen during the season because I think for a lot
Yeah.
of players that we've seen that we wanted to be extended over the past few years, it's been like, okay, once opening day is here, we're not talking anymore.
Right.
Like that's out of the question. So I'm sure it's not easy to be doing that in season, but good for Ian Happ, good for Happ having a hot start and
Hmm.
you know proving the point that he deserves to be here long term. And it's just got to be a weight off of his shoulders, especially with what he went through last year when it seemed like he and Contreras were almost certainly going to be traded and then they weren't, to then be back this year, but still have that looming speculation of like, well, if the Cubs are 500, maybe you're gone halfway through the year. So
Hmm.
good for him. I feel like I didn't know a lot about him until the compound started, and now I have like a better sense of who he is as a dude. He seems like a great guy. He seems like a good team leader, and yeah, do it. Copy paste, like do that with other people that deserve to be here long term. Give me a Steele extension.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. And Steele's a guy who's under contract for a couple more years, but I just am such a believer in what that package is as
Right.
a top half of the rotation starter. You know, I mean, I'm not taking a number one starter off the table for that guy yet. He's a top 10 in ERA, I think even higher than that since July of last year. The stuff is there. The Cubs drafted Dylan Cease and Justin Steele in back-to-back rounds, the fourth and the fifth, I believe, years ago.
Good drafting.
Yeah, that was good drafting. Yeah, I would absolutely love to see him locked up in that way. And just talking about the pitching, I guess Hayden Wisniewski was not good to start the year, and then he started a little shaky against the A's, and then I think he retired 15 guys in a row at one point. And this is the thing because I saw a lot of people on Twitter as we were over there on Attaway Games Pod. I saw a lot of people being like, "Yep, it's just the A's. That's what you're supposed to do," and a lot of people being like, "Wisniewski's back, baby," and it is neither of those things because this, I think, what it was is this is what he was supposed to do, and he did not let that game get away from him the way he did, previously
Hmm.
in the game against Seattle that led to the big comeback. But this was also fortuitous timing that he was facing the A's, and it was a good, spring training. He's doing what Kyle Hendricks is doing in Arizona right now, as Hendricks is
Right.
ramping back up, throwing extended spring training games. He did what he needed to do, and watching all the pitchers go through this rotation. Drew Smiley was great too against LA. Obviously Stroman is a ERA under 1 as we're sitting here after 3 starts. Makes you feel really good, especially because the team atop the division and a team that's going to be contending all year, the Brewers, Brandon Woodruff is out sort of indefinitely right
Hmm.
now with an issue, and Corbin Burns has an issue and might miss a start or two at least. So that pitching depth really makes you start to feel pretty good right now.
Yeah, it does. And somehow we've gotten this far into recording and haven't even talked about Patrick Wisdom, who has just absolutely exploded over the past week. I mean, 4 straight games with a home run. That streak ended last night, but he had what was it, five homers in 4 games.
Mm-hmm. And hitting a homer to center field in Oakland, like if you see you just see a camera shot of that stadium, it seems like it's impossible to hit a ball
Yeah,
out to center. It just
it
looks.
reminds me of the old Metrodome, like the big baggy.
Yeah, totally. It's really too bad I mean, Oakland fans aren't going to get a team that much longer. It seems like
Yeah.
I did see that Oakland fans were considering a reverse boycott game where they all go to the game, which sounds like a joke, but it is not. It is actually a thing going around where they're like, should we all just go to one game to show that we're not the problem? You know,
I
and
actually kind of like that.
it's funny. It's like I wish the god awful owners in Oakland wouldn't profit from it for a day. But I mean, yeah, it's Oakland. It sucks because this is not the main topic today. But Oakland has like particularly good sports fans, and they've really gotten fucked over football and baseball wise. Um, yeah, but I mean, as we're sitting here today, the Cubs are, as you said, looking to finish off the first sweep of the year, and they will be facing. If you're listening to this before the game, the pitcher the A's are going to be running out there is a guy named Mason Miller making his first MLB start, and
Oh boy, what have I done?
he is well, Adam. He sits about 100. He
Oh,
throws a slider up to about. I think his slider's gotten up to like 93 ish.
well,
So
that's
this
just
is
rude.
it is very rude. This is one of the best pitching prospects in the world right now, and he's I think has a career high most pitches thrown 65. So he's not going a lot of innings.
Hmm.
It's but you might. Who knows? You could get really smoked for a couple of innings,
Yeah.
but then you're getting an Oakland A's bullpen game. What even would that be with this roster?
I mean, I couldn't tell you. If you asked me to name people on the A's bullpen, even including the people that we've seen pitch the last few days, I don't know that I would be able to answer that.
Is Eckersley back there? What's happening?
Eckersley's back there. I think
Mm.
Anthony Bass is going to get traded back over there.
Uh-huh.
You can spill all the popcorn you want in the Oakland Coliseum because there's
Hmm.
no one there to see it. It's like if a
Yeah.
tree falls in the forest.
He's going to be hired as a cleanup supervisor over there in
It'll be like the
Oakland.
end of Rookie of the Year, which I always love. Like the guy who was the GM who screws up is selling hot dogs, and he actually accepts the job as a punishment.
Right. Yeah. It is. It's like you had the money though. You could just take a few months off. No, this guy he's in
No, there's no
severe
severance in
gambling
Rookie
debt.
of the Year. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Um. Yeah. I think if for those who don't know, Anthony Bass is being a real dipshit on Twitter. Did you see the photo? So basically, his kids dropped a bunch of popcorn on the
Hmm.
ground, and his wife took a photo of it, and was his wife is pregnant and was mad that the flight attendants said she had to clean it up. Is what the story
Yeah,
is that they're pitching. And Adam, I fly so many times every
all the
year
time.
for so many years.
Hmm.
The amount of popcorn on the ground is like the sloppiest scene I've ever seen on a plane. I've never
It
seen an
looks like
adult.
someone eating peanuts at a baseball game.
Yeah, it is Texas Roadhouse shit with just like I could not believe what a slot machine these people were. This is and then to for his wife to take the time to take a photo of the mess and then blast it out like they're the good guys was amazing.
It
Hilarious.
was a real, yeah, it was a real vibe of like a, do you know who my husband is? And even Blue Jays fans were like, we don't.
No, we right. He was Anthony Bass, former Cub, and it's like
Yeah,
he's been decent, but no, you're not famous. It's yeah, it was funny shit.
you're flying commercial.
Yes, that too. Which we respect. That's us, but fucking be a part of society. You're a reliever, for Christ's sake.
It does remind me of one time getting on a mega bus to Boston. And there was a woman in like stilettos, like very dressed up, and I was like, "We are getting on the same mega bus." I don't know how to tell you that. You're not fooling anyone.
Yeah, exactly. But I think we began that with Patrick Wisdom stuff. But yeah, it's funny because Wisdom coming into this year was a guy sort of overlooked, and you were like, I don't know, does he get
Hmm.
some time at first base? Is he sort of a mix him in utility guy, getting some first, some right field, some third, some DH? And this guy is consistently a good hitter. Like he has a
Yeah,
lot of strikeouts, but his career line is up over 110 WRC plus, 10% above league average, and he's got obviously raw power for days, and
hmm,
he's really like tapping into something right now. I mean, I think it's an overused comparison for guys who are older breakouts. But
hmm.
like a little Jose Bautista late career action. This is a guy who like has
Right.
repeatable raw power. He's been hitting a lot of bombs for a few years now. That's real stuff.
Yeah, and you do hope that it's more of a Jose Bautista situation than a David Bodie thing. All due respect to David Bodie, but you
Sure,
know
he's
somebody
still
who didn't
around.
get a chance until later. But yeah, Wisdom. I would love. I'm sure he doesn't have the name recognition to do it, but Patrick Wisdom in a home run derby would be a lot of fun. Like the guy's got a ton of power.
Totally.
Um, Now, what is his contract situation? Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't off the top of my head. I'll look it up, but it's as a Cubs fan who likes Patrick Wisdom, it's pleasant. So I'll look that up real quick.
Yeah, I
But
guess
keep going.
I'm curious because I'm wondering if he might be somebody like a David Bodie who, you know, Wisdom was in the minors for most of his 20s. He's now finally getting his shot, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind having some financial assurance. And I wonder if he might be a good candidate for an extension as well that
I
you could get on a fairly team friendly deal.
I think probably not. And I would love for him to get all the money he can possibly get. Right now, he's making under $800,000 for this
Wow.
year, but he's just an arbitration guy for the next 3 years. So I mentioned how you've got Horner, Happ, Seiya Suzuki all through 2026 right now. You also have Patrick Wisdom on arbitration years through
Mhm.
2026, which is his age 34 season. Then he's a unrestricted free agent in going into 2027. So I think from the Cubs perspective, I'm not rooting for ownership, but I think you just ride that out. You just accept
Right.
the arbitration raises whatever they're going to be at that point, and then he'll be a free agent going into age 35 year. But the good news is that Patrick Wisdom should be a Cub through
Hmm.
2026. And Wisdom is a guy who was bad defensively last year, has been better this year, and we know he
Yeah.
has the tools to be decent defensively. He's
Hmm.
athletic, he runs well, he's got a killer arm.
Yeah, and
Um,
right field even he's looked okay, at least in terms of his arm.
Patrick Wisdom is a guy who it's hard to find guys like this on the waiver wire, which the Cubs did, but it's such a guy who you would have killed to have on those contending teams of like
Hmm.
2018, 2019, something like that. And I think Patrick Wisdom is a guy, as this team moves towards being a true championship contender, hopefully sooner than later, you can find a place on your team for Patrick Wisdom over
Hmm.
the next few years, and he's going to get a lot of at bats. So that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, I don't know that I fully understand enough about how arbitration works and if there are like limits to how much more you can make based
Hmm.
on your performance. But certainly there's probably going to be some regression to the mean. But like, let's say for the sake of argument, Patrick Wisdom just continues to be great and hit 50 home runs this year.
Right.
Wouldn't that arbitration number be pretty substantial next year, or is it like capped at a certain amount? Do you know about how that
A
works?
little bit, yeah. It's complicated, but it is basically it's set up so you almost never have like a wild tens of millions jump from one
Hmm.
year to the next. The arbitration numbers are affected by the year that precedes them, and how arbitration works is basically the team makes an offer, the team makes an offer, and the players side makes an offer, and you don't go in between them. One side wins if you take it all the way to arbitration. So, it's sort of a weird carnival gambling game, to be like who gets closer to the believable number according to the mediator. And basically the numbers the mediators go by, it's cloudy how they do it exactly, but they're guided by a sort of more gradual progression. So it's basically it does not really work in Patrick Wisdom's favor
Right,
at this point.
right, right. What else has been encouraging? I mean, I feel like there are things that are kind of under the radar that most people wouldn't talk about, but even someone like a Mark Leiter Jr. having a really nice year.
Yeah,
Um,
Michael Wirtz ass vibes from Mark Leiter, where it's just a guy, a reliever who, when he shows up, you don't really think about, and
mhm.
when you get to roster crunch, you think, well, we could do without that guy. The Cubs did that; they took him off the 40 man, and other teams didn't grab him, even though he was really good out
Yeah.
of the bullpen last year, and he's striking out almost half the guys he faces now with a forkball, which is fun.
Hmm.
It's they call it a splitter on TV, but Mark Leiter says it's a true forkball, and he's really good in that bullpen, and he just looks like a guy who is like behind the grill at some sort of mom and pop shop in Georgia, who doesn't talk much. He's got the little mustache thing going on. But yeah, he's been really good in the bullpen, and in terms of things to look out for right now, Seiya Suzuki's back. Hit a home run in Oakland on a 95-mile-an-hour ball up and in on his hands. And last night in Oakland went 2 for 2 with 3 walks, which tells me he's just like seeing the ball well right now.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. He's
borderline
back. Brandon
superstar
Hughes is
upside.
back.
Hmm.
We got a 5 for 5 from Cody Bellinger. Like things are looking up.
Cody Bellinger is a guy. It's such a weird situation when the Cubs have their right fielder and left fielder locked up for the next several years. They have a guy who's 27, has won the MVP, in Cody Bellinger, who's here on a 1 year deal. And it just seems like there's no chance Cody Bellinger would remain with the team after this year. It's sort of either way. Obviously, the Cubs prospects they have PCA, Brennan Davis, those guys are outfielders as well. And basically who have the DH spot in center field to work in whoever busts their way up prospect wise. But he's getting hits off lefties. He's hitting
Yeah.
bombs. He's just
He's
looking
getting
really
called for pitch clock violations when he's getting an applause, a standing
yeah,
ovation. I mean,
yeah.
he's doing it all.
When the Dodgers fans were very classily giving him a standing ovation as he returned, that was super dumb to see the pitch clock violation. It's just weird because it's like, yeah, we're gonna have 1 year Cody Bellinger. And he's
Yeah.
fun. It's hard to get attached, but it's like he's really good defensively out there in center, and he just seems to. I don't want to say like fully fixed, but he's not
Mhm.
lost up there at the plate, and he seems to be seeing the ball well.
Right, and let me be clear that I'm not suggesting that a 10-6 start means the Cubs are going to contend for a World Series, but there are plenty of guys in sports history who've played 1 year somewhere, and it was a very memorable year. I don't think Raptors fans are going to forget Kawhi Leonard anytime soon. So we'll see what
No.
happens. But yeah, and I think we knew this when he signed. I think we hoped that the way this would play out was like, look, the guy's got 1 year. It is clearly a prove me sort of contract.
Hmm.
Hopefully he goes out and sets the world on fire. And yeah, he's not going to be here next year, but we get to benefit from him trying to prove everybody wrong. And I would love for that to be the case. So yeah, it's been fun to watch. I feel like the vibes are good. Like in terms of a Cubs vibe check, everybody seems to be enjoying one another, and I think that happens more when you're winning. Of course,
Hmm.
there are
Sure.
going to be times where that's not the case, but it's been pretty encouraging so far. I think there's definitely concern about who the Cubs closer is going to be and how that's going to work out. Like if there is anything early on in the season that you think of, like thinking ahead in terms of what the Cubs might need if they're still contending in July, I think it is another high end bullpen arm slash closer type pitcher. Nothing against Fulmer. It's just like I don't know. There
Fulmer
also
kind of.
was some not great managerial stuff going on Saturday, but
Yeah, when they, the one walk off game, and I'll focus on the win, four more wins than there are losses right now when it comes to manager stuff. But they had Austin Barnes sitting on deck who cannot hit, and then after the game, my main problem with that was not so much that Fulmer, who was supposed to sort of pitch around Peralta, like
mhm.
the old pitch around, not quite pitch around, just give him kind of nothing to hit and see if he swings. But there's human error in there, right? To me,
Mhm.
the inexcusable thing was after the game, Ross being like, no one knew what was up with Will Smith. Will Smith wasn't in the ballpark. Like, if you should know, get
Right.
out some binocs and take a look across the
Mhm.
dugout. You know what Will Smith looks like, or you should have someone in your organization who knows and can at least, if you're going into the ninth inning, pinch hitters are a thing, and your bench does not know who is unavailable when reporters know,
Right.
that's on the organization, the manager and
Yeah, and I also
upstairs.
understand that you don't want to put someone in a position where they can walk in the winning run like that.
Mm,
As a fan, there are a few things more frustrating than that,
right.
like
And
watching a team lose that way. But
totally. I think you're right that if this team's contending, sort of a small trade for a higher and ninth inning reliever would be what's up. Although if Brad Boxberger is getting the strike zone he got at the end of the
oh
Dodgers
my
game when he
god,
closed it out with three strikeouts
none
looking.
of which were strikes.
No, it's I feel bad for Jason Hayward, who's just like, you got to be fucking
Yeah,
kidding me. You're calling me
yeah,
out on that against my old team. And Freddie Freeman too. All three
yeah, it was
hitters.
bad.
If you have that strike zone, anyone can close for you. But yeah, I'm not worried about Fulmer. He got soft contacted to death in that game. I
Right.
think that's you've got guys
Yeah, that
sitting
ball
in.
that Peralta hits is an out most of the time.
Yeah,
It
and
just found a hole.
you've got guys sitting at AAA who I think are going to be very useful whenever they come up for injury or any other reason. Jeremiah Estrada's down there. I'm a big Cam Sanders guy. I think the bullpen's going to be pretty good. But yeah, if you're looking at the deadline and the Cubs are really pushing in on the end of the year, that's
Hmm.
probably where you would see the deal. And this deadline, not trying to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it's something I predicted in the season preview we did. It's going to be really interesting with Stroman and Bellinger, who might be two guys that contenders really want on this team,
Right.
who are not going to be on this team. And I mean, do you flip them to sell when you're in a playoff position? And I think that, or in contention for one of those wild cards. And I don't think the Cubs will, but should they, might be an interesting question come July.
Right. Well, the last thing I had, I don't know what else you had to chat about, but speaking of guys who might come up from AAA, where are you at in terms of your desire for Matt Mervis to be on this team?
I am sort of like It's April 19th, so I'm not losing my mind about
Hmm.
a Matt Mervis who's hitting very well in AAA, which uh, both halves of that sentence are important. He's hitting very well. It's AAA, so I think those are both important parts. But I think I'm where I was in December when where it was like, okay, like don't no need to bring in, let's say, an Eric Hosmer, and like we
Right.
don't. If we're gonna do that, you might as well just start with Matt Mervis. I mean,
Hmm.
The Cubs are 28th in Major League Baseball. I saw in a stat in both in OPS at the DH and first base positions. And Adam,
Right.
the two things that made that I wanted basically in the offseason was Anthony Rizzo and Wilson Contreras, who would be
Hmm.
those positions. It would have been Contreras mostly DHing and then
Yeah.
taking Tucker Barnhart's ABs every once in a while as the functional backup catcher. But I think at this point, and Trey Mancini's struggling a lot right now
Hmm.
too. He's a guy who's sort of down, and he's also taken some of those first base at bats. I don't. I I'm not like hating on Hosmer as a baseball player, but I don't know what I don't know what we're hoping for with that instead of Matt Mervis, who's like an older prospect. He's I think 24. He's
Yeah,
not like
I
old
mean, I
24,
guess it's
25.
just you bring in a guy like Hosmer to think that maybe he's got a little bit of juice left, and or to buy you some time to let Mervis get more at bats in AAA, with the understanding that like if you waive Hosmer, no big deal, he's not getting paid
No,
anything. So
he's getting paid by the Padres still. That's fine. I mean, I think Hosmer, in terms of the juice left, it's the juice he had last year. It's consistent juice. It's
yeah,
it's
it's
there,
consistent juice that doesn't taste very good.
right. Yeah, it's
A lot
real.
of pulp.
Yeah,
It's
it's
very
like
pulpy.
it's a diner that forgot to order more orange juice, so they're in back throwing some water in it, at the end, just
Don't
trying to
give me
make it
Sunny
stretch.
D and water.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's he's the Sunny D in water for space right now. I'm not even hating on him. I just think this team's more fun and interesting with Matt Mervis, who's
Mhm.
25. He's
Yeah.
25. It's time, like it's time for him to be up here. He's going to be under
The
team
guy
control.
can rent a car. He can be trusted.
He doesn't have to pay the extra money. Get him in here. So yeah, I think, and I do think we're going to see Mervis up in the next couple of weeks, barring like Hosmer really turning it around, where he's sort of where you expect him now. It's a lot of soft contact and about 20% under league average
Yeah.
offensively.
Well, in an early episode, I believe I alluded to some sort of Haas Mervis T-shirt, but I do believe their two existences are mutually exclusive.
I think so too. Two lefty hitting first basemen. I
Yeah.
mean, we'll have to. People have been freaking out about a couple of like defensive plays at first not made. You can have some of those with Matt Mervis too.
Yeah.
But I think it would be exciting to get that bat up in here.
Well, if Hosmer needs a slump buster, there's a different lefty first baseman he can consult with.
Yeah. When do we play the Diamondbacks? Grace is up in that booth. That is, the Diamondbacks employ both Bob Brenly and Mark Grace in the booth, which
Yikes.
is just like, can you even do that in 2023? Does the game have to move directly to Fox News if you're doing that? Like, does it have to leave Fox Sports completely? I don't
I
know.
think it's on Truth Social.
It's a yeah. Please follow that booth. Throwing some truths. Yeah, I think that's basically all I have so far. Oh, the Cardinals are being managed by a guy who's just starting fights with everyone on his team, and the Cardinals are bad. Wilson Contreras did hit 2 homers last night. I don't know if that's
Mhm.
going to get the Bleacher Nation update treatment
I mean,
as
Kevin's
any.
wearing red right now. If you're listening to this, Kevin's wearing red. Clearly a Contreras apologist. The bull
Yes.
season is over. There's no excuse for it. I mean,
Yes. I went to Ball State. We were the Cardinals, which is sort of conflicting for me. So
yeah.
there's Cardinals in my life that I love. But yeah, I think that's all I got for this week. You doing the look forward, Adam? I know you like a good schedule look forward.
Sure, yeah. I mean, we've got one left against the A's. We've got a 4 game set against the Dodgers, and then who do we have early next week?
Early next week. Let's see. We've got the oh, my thing is not coming up. Okay, we've got the games against the Dodgers at home, and then we've got home against the Padres, who are 8-11.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Well,
Yeah. and then the Marlins after that, which is the following week. So it's, I mean, the Cubs are they're going to get the one game as we speak today, Wednesday, against the Athletics, and then after that, it's teams that you expect to be fighting for the West Division title,
Mhm.
but who are both not playing that well, and
Right.
for 7 games. So this is going to be an interesting 7 game stretch against the
It
Dodgers and
is.
Padres.
And then, not to look too far ahead, but after those games, we have a 10-game stretch that involves 6 games against the Marlins and 4 against the Nationals. So, not that I don't think the Marlins have been terrible, but
No, they're
yeah,
sneaky.
yeah. But there is a chance here to be heading into May and through May in a pretty good way, but it is still early, so I guess we shall see.
Yeah, but they're playing good. Let's enjoy it for now. At Away Games Pod on Twitter, on Instagram, on all the things. Thanks for listening, everybody. Pick up your own damn popcorn.